Let's take care of a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Today's session will be recorded, and a copy of that recording will be sent to all registrants, so you can just sit back and relax. You don't have to take notes, or you can even use your AI note taker if you would like, but we will be sending you a copy of the webinar. There are 3 polls during the webinar today to foster participant interaction. We encourage you to participate in that. If you have a question or comment during the webinar, please submit that using the Q&A feature of Zoom. I have colleagues that are monitoring that. They may respond to your questions in real time, or we may save those until the end. There will be a survey that you'll receive via email after the webinar. Please respond to that. We'd love to hear from you. It helps us to prepare for other free webinars like this on topics that are of interest to you. SmarterServices is the host for today's webinar. And in case you're not familiar with us at SmarterServices, here's a little bit of information about us. We've been around for 24 years, and that's a long time for an ed tech company, right? Over that period of time, we've served well over 1,000 institutions. We've assessed millions of students. We've proctored millions of students. We do that through 2 different services. SmarterMeasure, the Learning Readiness Indicator, is an assessment that quantifies a learner's level of readiness primarily using non-cognitive traits and attributes and skills. And then Smarter Proctoring is a full spectrum proctoring management system. It offers 7 different proctoring modalities. If you'd like to know more about each of those services, just let us know and we'll tell you about them. We'll be saying a little bit about those and how they can play into this job that we have as educational leaders of creating a culture of academic integrity. So why does this conversation matter now? I should have said at the outset that this webinar titled Academic Integrity in the Age of AI is the first of 3 webinars in this series. For this first webinar, we've chosen the subtitle of Don't Just Detect, Deter. And so why is that conversation important? Well, for a few reasons. One, online proctoring's very commonplace now. It's popular, right? The software for that has improved so much over the last decade. While Smarter Proctoring is an excellent provider of that, there are other providers as well that your school may use. So today's conversation is not specific to any proctoring platform, but just about this general construct of academic integrity and how we monitor that. But it's a commonplace experience for our students, right? And AI has raised so many questions. I mean, if you've been to an academic conference this year or in your inbox, all of the different webinar invitations that you get, AI is such a common topic, right? Everybody's talking about it. Oh, what does it mean? What can we do as educators? Is it something we should be for or something we should be against? And so it's raising so many different questions. And as I've watched many of those presentations, one truth that seems to be evolving in that conversation, something that I'm hearing a lot, is that we as educators need to create educational experiences that are personal, that are authentic, that prompt reflection, that promote presence, and that foster community. Because these things of being personal and being authentic and reflecting on ourselves, those are activities that they're internal, they're personal, right? Those are not things that AI can do for us. And so in our teaching and learning processes, as well as in our assessment processes, we need to be thinking about ways that we can do that that are personal, that are reflective, and that are authentic. And so today what I'm going to be proposing is a preventive model of academic integrity that is just that. It's very personal, it's very reflective, it's very authentic, and it helps learners think about themselves as they move toward this decision they're going to make about whether or not to cheat in their online exam. One truth is that detection is not enough. And that may seem kind of strange for someone who leads a company that offers an online proctoring product, but it's true. If all we're doing is detecting, that's not enough. There's more that we can be doing to deter. And that's what we're going to think about in this webinar today. And finally, prevention, preventing students from cheating, creating a culture of integrity. Do you know where the responsibility for that lies? With us as academic leaders. When I looked at the attendee list today, I was so pleased to see many high-level educators on this list. You are in roles of leading your department, of leading your academic program, some of you in leading entire institutions. And the onus lies with us to create a culture that fosters academic integrity at our institutions. How can we do that? Well, let's think about it a little bit. First of all, back to this idea that detection alone is not adequate. And we know why. I mean, think about it. If all you're doing is using proctoring software to catch a student cheating, well, when that happens, integrity has already been compromised, right? Our response as an organization is often punitive and not developmental. This can result in resentment on the part of the student toward their faculty member, toward their institution, maybe even toward other students. That's not good. And even though we've done all of that, even though we've provided all of the proctoring, we've gone through all of the committees after the event where someone has been caught cheating, and that's a lot of work, right? We get that. When we've done all of that, and we've done the best we can at all of that, we still have not addressed the underlying issues that deal with ethical development. So that's what I'm calling for us as leaders to think about is what can we do before the test to foster ethical development for our students? So the question is, what if we could reduce cheating before it ever happens? That's this preventive model that I'm going to propose today. So let's try a poll. Liz, I will let you launch this poll. And as she's doing that, I'll read the text here. Which factor do you believe has the greatest influence on students' decision to cheat in online exams at your institution? And again, this is not a right or wrong question for this poll. It's just really a perception question about it. Your school, what are the greatest influences? Is it the high academic and personal pressure that students under? Is it just a lack of readiness for the exam? Is it a perceived ease of cheating? Or is it confusion about what's expected and what's allowed? So we have some results coming in. I'll give it just another minute. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results. And Liz, if you can confirm, I guess the attendees are seeing those results. I'm not sure, but I'll share them with you in case you're not seeing them. The winner in that, with 36% of responses, was lack of readiness or study skills. That's very important because what we're about to talk about is learner readiness. Second place at 31% is high academic and personal pressure. Third is the perceived low risk or of ease of cheating at 28%. And only 5% put confusion about expectations and allowable resources. Maybe now they're showing. And the results of these polls will be included in the follow-up information that we send after the webinar. So that's kind of interesting to get your perception about those things that influence our students. And the leading perception that you indicated was about this issue of learner readiness, whether that's readiness for the exam or just general readiness for learning. And I'm really pleased that that was the leader because that's really what we're talking about is what can we do as educational leaders, as faculty members, as department chairs, as deans, as university presidents, what can we do to create a culture of academic integrity that works well before the exam, that gets the student ready, so that when it comes time to make that decision about whether or not to cheat, they decide not to cheat. That's the deterrence that we're hoping toward. So, what does the what does the literature say about why students cheat? Uh, High pressure, that's a leading cause. Many students feel so much pressure to perform, and as you probably know from your research on cheating, is that it is most often not the students who are struggling academically who cheat. It's the high performing students. It's the students that have to make a high grade point average to get their scholarship renewed, or to be at a certain level in their sorority or fraternity, or to just meet the pressure that their family is putting them under because of all of this money that they're investing in their education. Students have an immense amount of pressure, and they feel like they have to do well on the exam no matter what. And then as they're feeling that pressure, they may rationalize by saying things like, well, everybody else is doing it. Or, this whole system here at this school is just unfair. Or I just had no choice. And so there's mental dialogue that they have that rationalizes the cheating decision. Maybe they perceive the opportunity is just good for it. Maybe the school is using a very weak software for cheating deterrence, right? We talk to many schools that are still using, believe it or not, video conferencing tools like Zoom as their proctoring technology. And that's great for something like a webinar like this, but that software is not designed as a proctoring piece of software, and it doesn't control the browser, and it doesn't record everything that's going on, and it's not FERPA approved, and there's just so many things wrong with using weak, unintended software like that. And so students may see an opportunity to cheat. And then finally, is just that perceived risk about ease of cheating or a low likelihood of being caught. But what I want you to think about is that cheating is most often a calculated response. Students don't wait until they're in the exam to decide if they're going to cheat or not. Most students who are going to cheat come prepared to cheat. It's a premeditated decision. And what I want to talk about today in this preventive model is how we can influence that decision to cheat that happens well before the exam. How can we influence that decision and get that student to decide not to cheat? Well, one way to put that is, how do we move from surveillance to support? How do we shift the dialogue? How do we shift the messaging that we're communicating to our students from "we're watching you" to "we're helping you"? How do we do that? Well, online proctoring, it does increase accountability. And that's a good thing, right? I mean, imagine how much cheating there would be if we weren't using tools like smarter proctoring. But using those tools alone are not enough. They're not changing that decision process. The enhanced level of deterrence that I'm talking about is accountability through a proctoring tool like Smarter Proctoring, plus things like student self-understanding, clear expectations, and early intervention. So here is our second poll. Liz, if you can launch the second poll. Again, not a right or wrong question, just about what you think at your institution. But which statement best reflects how your institution is currently approaching academic integrity? Is it more about our primary focus is detecting and then responding? Or we emphasize both detection and clear communication? We combine proctoring with some preventive or student support strategies, or we intentionally focus on prevention and ethical development, not just enforcement. So we'll give it a minute or two for those responses. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We'll end that poll. I think I'm sharing the results there now. As you'll see, clear winner, 48% is the second choice, that we emphasize both detection and clear communication of expectations. That's a very strong, good practice. Second is that we combine proctoring with some preventive or student support strategies. That's awesome. That's where we're going in this conversation today. So I'll stop sharing that. So, what I want to propose today as a good practice at your institution, I'm thrilled to see that the second place vote there was that many of your schools are already doing some form of that. And I hope today to show you a tool that you can use as you're doing that, that it's a tool many of you already have at your institution, but is this preventive model. And in this preventive model, you're using learner readiness data, combining that with early support and clarity of expectation, and then adding that final layer of online proctoring. So, what is that tool that you may have? Many of the persons on this webinar today are current clients of our product, the SmarterMeasure Learning Readiness Indicator. Many of the others of you are not. So if you're currently a client, your institution uses SmarterMeasure, what I'm about to say is something that you've got available to you, right? And if it's something you would like to try, just let your account manager know. They can configure this ethical development assessment for you, and it won't count against your license, right? For those of you that don't use SmarterMeasure, I'm going to tell you in just a moment something really nice. We're going to give you 100 assessments for free that you can use with your students. But let me tell you more about it before I share that information with you. So what does SmarterMeasure assess? It assesses several things, but out of those lists of the many things it assesses, I picked these 5 or 6 here that really relate to this decision-making process that a student goes through when they're thinking about cheating. So all of these are variables that in the SmarterMeasure assessment, the student is answering multiple questions to measure that construct, some positively stated, some negatively stated. SmarterMeasure is a highly researched tool, very valid, very reliable. So you've got data from the student, individual data about their levels of motivation, about their control over procrastination, about their time management, about their study skills, about their locus of control, which is the degree to which they feel like they're in control of their academic destiny, their levels of academic confidence, and their willingness to ask for help. So think about that. You've got those data points individually about that student. And so, what you can then do in your success coaching process, in your orientation course, in other parts of the student experience. I know for my daughter who is in a sorority, shout out to Chi Omega, but her sorority really promotes academic integrity, right? And academic preparedness. And so, in their coaching of these girls in the sorority about preparing for their test, what if you had access to that data, individual data about that student? And remember when we're talking about AI, and we said one of the things that we must do as educators is use it in ways that are very personal, very authentic, and very reflective. That's exactly what this SmarterMeasure data is. It's personal, because they took the test. It's authentic. They answered their questions. It's reflective. They had to think about it, right? So these things that SmarterMeasure measures closely align with the triggers for online cheating. And you've measured this data, and you can have conversations with the student about this data well before the exam. See what we're doing? We're getting the student to reflect about themselves, their level of readiness, which is what you voted as the highest thing that goes into that decision about their decision to cheat or not. So, those of you that are current clients of SmarterMeasure know that the primary design of that assessment is to measure many things about learner readiness, right? That you use in your academic coaching and in your orientation courses. What I'm suggesting today is another possible use of that data for our current clients that you've already collected to use that data in your conversations, in focus groups with students, in individual coaching sessions with students, to influence this decision-making process they're going to have about whether or not to cheat. How does that conversation go? Well, if the student doesn't have good control over their procrastination, talk about that reality that you don't want to wait until the last minute to prepare for your exam because then you're going to go in unprepared and be more likely to cheat. If you're a student who scored low on willingness to ask for help, recognize that and be intentional about reaching out to other students in your study group or your faculty member or someone in your sorority or fraternity that's there to help you, whatever support resources the student has. If they're prone not to ask for that, encourage them to make sure they understand the content and what's expected of them. So that's how you can use this very personal, individual learner readiness data to help the students in this ethical development process. So, what I'm offering, because I feel very strongly about this, that these non-cognitive traits and attributes and skills, that they're very closely related to this decision-making process that helps students decide not to cheat. I'm so passionate about it that as the founder of this company, I want you to try it with 100 of your students and let me know how it goes. That means for our current clients, tell your account manager and they will set up a new assessment group, and these 100 will not count against your license, right? But if you're currently not using SmarterMeasure, let us know. We'll set up this account for you so you can use this assessment to foster this conversation. Let me show you what this assessment would look like and what I'm showing you here. And Liz, if you can confirm that I'm still screen sharing.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, great. So this is a little custom version of SmarterMeasure that we've created just for this purpose. Those of you that are current clients know that this is just a null interface basically, but you would have branding that's specific to your organization up at the top and the colors and all. But you can see here we've titled this assessment Ethical Development. And the instructions, and again, this text is all, it could be customized to your institution. But this is how we would describe this assessment to your students. In this assessment, you'll be asked to complete a brief reflection designed to support your ethical development as an online learner. This activity is not a test and has no right or wrong answers. Its purpose is to help you think about your own readiness, the expectations of an online proctored exam, and choices you may face under pressure. By taking a moment to reflect on your preparation, stressors, and understanding of academic integrity, you can approach an online proctored assessment with greater clarity, confidence, and a commitment to demonstrating your own learning honestly and responsibly. Upon completion, you'll receive a score report, which will not only help you understand your strengths and opportunities for improvement, but will also provide resources to help you succeed. Remember, this assessment is strictly for your benefit. Take the time to rate yourself honestly. That's some wording that we would give to describe it to your students. Let me show you what it would look like. Okay, so they come to the first screen. They're just going to tell it who they are. And then there are some questions here that are specific to this construct that we're talking about. Consider these questions proof of concept, right? I authored these questions just for this webinar. You may choose to use these questions as they are, or you can edit them. But the intent here is to prompt your student to reflect on this construct of academic integrity, right? So, what are these questions? When you think about an upcoming online proctored exam, which statement best describes how prepared you feel? And gives some choices. Which factor is most likely to affect your performance during this exam? More choices. How clear are you about resources and behaviors are allowed during this online proctored exam? If you were to struggle during the exam, which response best reflects what you'd most likely do? And then here's an example of a discussion, a reflection question. And again, this is, in the day of AI, we need to have questions like this that are very personal, very reflective. I mean, you could put it in an AI engine, but, it's going to be much better if it comes from you. And the discussion question is, online proctored exams are designed to be both fair and challenging, and students approach them with different levels of preparation, pressure, and confidence. In a short personal essay, reflect on your own readiness to take an online proctored exam by addressing the following in your response. How prepared and confident you typically feel going into an online exam. What factors influence that readiness? Any sources of pressure or stress, academic or personal, that can affect your focus during an exam. How clear you feel about expectations, rules, and permitted resources in an online proctored testing environment. Your response should focus on self-awareness rather than right or wrong answers. Your goal is to reflect on your habits, challenges, and strengths so you can better prepare for success in an ethical and responsible way. Just an example of a reflective discussion question. I understand that in the workflow with your students, you may not have the luxury for a success coach or an academic advisor to have an individual conversation with each student about academic integrity. But a tool like this, an assessment, can prompt them to think about it and then, somewhat similar to that conversation you would have with the success coach, but in a way that can be automated. So I'm going to click through here and just kind of show you what this would look like. And then there are two scales of SmarterMeasure that were included in this ethical development assessment. And these are the individual attributes and life factors. Just know that the full SmarterMeasure assessment has several other scales, everything from learning styles to technical competency to internet competency to keyboarding abilities to math readiness, writing readiness. There's several scales, but this ethical development one here just has two scales. That was individual attributes, and then this one is life factors. And again, if you would like to try this with 100 students and you'd just like a login to, I'm going through this quickly. I understand you're not reading these questions, but you're just seeing it. I'll be glad to give you a login where you can do this right here. You can look at these questions and think about how relevant they would be to your students. But I'm clicking through them because I want you to see the output so that you can think about how you can use this output with your students in fostering an academic integrity culture at your institution. So the student has taken the assessment. That's not very long, right? Just a few questions about ethical development and then individual attributes and life factors. And so here it gives, their responses to all of those questions that were up front. Then it gives a summary of their scores. And then it's going to show their scores for that scale of individual attributes and life factors. And then what you've got here is score report text that is score dependent. And so you can see, as I just went through kind of at random, this particular student has a low level of readiness for help seeking. That means they're not prone to ask for help when they need it. Well, that's a risk factor leading up to cheating, right? So if you're working with a student and they have a low score here, this gives you some text you can say. We also provide a lot of other resources that are based on all of these scales and subscales that you can help students with. Down at the bottom, we link to several different web-based resources for support. This list can be customized. So if your institution has its own resources that you'd like to provide, you can link to those here, right? So you see how that would work, how you can use the SmarterMeasure assessment to collect individual, personal, reflective data from a student, and then at some point in your student experience, could be in the orientation course, could be in a first year experience program, could be in, whatever experience that it is that the student is having, you use this data from the student about the student to help them prepare themselves so that when they are forced with that decision to cheat, hopefully they'll choose not to. So, what are the elements of this preventive model? Well, what we just talked about there, to first measure readiness, then use that data in your academic coaching. Offer tutoring and skill building to help the student prepare for the exam as well as possible. And then finally, do the online proctoring. And we'd love for you to do that with Smarter Proctoring. What are the benefits of this preventive model? For institutions, it's going to result in fewer violations, a stronger integrity culture, better student outcomes, more defensible assessment practices. Those are all great things to aspire to, right? For your students, It's going to lead to increased self-awareness. They're going to learn a lot about themselves with that assessment. Hopefully, their preparation will reduce test anxiety. They'll have clearer expectations of the process. One thing I wanted to mention about expectations, I know many of you on this call are Smarter Proctoring clients. Know that we offer free practice exams for your students, especially before the first time when they take a proctored exam. They need to know, what is that experience like? What's it like to log in, to have my computer checked, to have my browser controlled, all of those things. We want them to experience that before their first test to kind of give them that confidence of knowing what to expect so they won't be nervous during testing. And then hopefully it will support their problems before they occur. So, the key takeaway from this conversation today is to shift the message from "we're watching you" to a message something like "we want you to succeed honestly, and we're here to help." So, our final poll is, based on this conversation, what would be helpful to you as a next step? So respond there about the way that we can follow up with you. I'm going to pause here while you're filling that out and look over at our Q&A board. And Liz or Carol, if you can let me know if there are some unanswered questions I can speak to. Okay, several of you are responding to this final poll. Thank you for doing so. Again, you'll receive an email here just in a day or so, a follow-up email to this webinar. It will contain a link to the recording. It'll contain the results of these polls. May contain some other resources. It will have how you can follow up if you'd like to use this free 100 assessments with your students to see how that can help you create a culture of academic integrity, how you as a leader can foster ethical development with your students so that when it comes to that time to decide whether or not to cheat, we want them to decide not to cheat. We don't like catching students with smarter proctoring any more than you do. We would love to never see a student cheat. That's our goal, and I hope this information has been helpful. Thank you for your time today.